See, that's what I'm after. Get on, look at that. I've worked in the Malverns a fair bit, really loved it down there. I've worked a lot in Cornwall. Although I've loved those areas, I haven't felt the same chaos, the same I need to unravel this to make sense of it feelings as I do here in North Yorkshire. I have to sort things out, simplify things. There's so much more clutter here, and I like having to deal with that. I like to have to unravel it and, in a sense, make the subject my own in the process. There is a kind of uniqueness, in a sense, with regard to this area here. Those who are familiar with the Yorkshire Dales, of course, they are on a much grander scale than around here. And we get under the umbrella of the North York Moors, giving a kind of impression of sort of wilderness landscape and open moorland. And I have even heard people say it's quite flat around here. However, the higher hills, and that I can see from my studio and even from the house, are 1,600 or 1,700 feet. So it fits within the bounds of what one regards as a sort of small mountain, really. It's always got richness of colour. It's got heather always. The bracken, when it dies, and it dies young, of course, it's always around the last thing to sprout around here and the first thing to die off. And then it goes sort of brown, and then when it gets wet, it goes almost burgundy. So there is always that lovely, rich colour that pervades the upper part of the hills around here. And then, because the fields are used a great deal for feed, there's crop after crop cut early, so we get the colour of the soil also breaking up the green. And it gives our valley a richness that isn't common to other parts of the country. That richness makes it something that I find extremely exciting to use as a base for my work. The series that I'm working on right now, exploring situations from Friapdale over to the coast, they're quite challenging because they're all very much minimalistic and very much about a sense of atmosphere. I'm moving further away again from the image in order to express my own feelings about what I experience. So they become again that bit more personal and less purely descriptive. A poetic feeling, sort of lyricism is vital to the atmosphere of my work, to what it gives off and to what people get from it. I do believe an awful lot of the time that the landscapes we paint are mental. They're inside us. They're part of our identity. And I've always felt that the area somewhere between figuration and abstraction is a domain which is vast. Endless artists can explore it and find their own territory and their own restrictions and limitations. But it's also like an open door between the physical world and the mental world. And people can access the way you think, and you have access to poetic concepts, because in your thinking you can turn things, twist things, bend things, move things. And as you do that, you can take the viewer along with you, and they can enter into domains and vistas hardly conceivable except through the process of painting. People do get out into the country and they can feel a sense of foreboding, a sense of being trapped, a sense of happiness, sense of joy, a delight in the kind of poetic feelings they get in certain situations. So the landscape becomes a kind of mediator between what I feel and the viewer. My work is abstracted, but not abstract. I give people a handle. Everything that you do in the painting practice is to pare away, to rid oneself of anything that's unimportant to that. That's why there's a bigness sometimes, and that's why there's a simplicity, to get rid of what isn't necessary. You'd think sometimes you'd want to add this or add that because it's more part of the experience, but it isn't that way. It's nearly always getting rid of the unimportant to release the idea. I've always been slightly suspicious of processes forcing you to become a different painter. I mean, you look at the watercolours of a painter, and then you look at his oils, and they sometimes seem to be completely different. And I didn't want that to happen in my case. I wanted one way of my work looking. So I chose acrylics because I could work with it as loosely and freshly as I could with watercolour. And I chose pastel to work with watercolour because it gave me richness of colour. So the two, the pastel and the watercolour, give me much the same as I would get with acrylic. sleeping at this hour for? What a waste of time, eh? If you set out to copy the different changes, you'll fail. If you're going to try and get every tree, every hill, every blade of grass, every bit of heather, you give up on that. You instantly look at the relationships that exist between things. If you can establish those relationships, those tones, even if it's just in 5-6 marks, then you will capture the excitement of that moment. There's a spot of light here, a spot of light there. The light is moving through the landscape. Endless possibilities. There's always been a great difference, I think, between painting in the studio and painting in the environment. Obviously, if you're painting in your studio and you're not painting things already in the studio, but painting from studies, painting from recollections, painting from memories, it's going to be different in feel from anything that involves the challenge of selection in the environment. The work becomes conceptual. You are away from its original source. You are able to be more selective, and you can leave out much more easily the things that you find much less significant. Always inherent in my small studies is a sense of bigness. It's something that I was always impelled to try and capture. Large paintings are challenging physically in the way you work. How to come to terms with working on a large scale, how to avoid over-detailing them, how to embrace the vastness of the subject you've chosen to consider, either the height of a hillside or a cliff, or the distance of a landscape as it goes back or as it stretches across the canvas space. These are awe-inspiring things, and it's what I feel and see in the landscape all the time. I'm living in it here and experiencing it hourly. And it begs for my consideration. I mean, there are times in the studio when I'm packing up at the end of a day, and all of a sudden the light shafts across the large expanse of landscape, and I'm tired and I don't want to paint, but it's begging me to address it. And I often feel a sense of guilt as I walk home. Why aren't I staying to make another record of the vastness of what I've seen? For me, the whole painting process has to surprise me. It has to be new to me every day. It's got to be an adventure. It's almost like a kind of injection, a kind of shock. What I have to do to stimulate my imagination and my feeling about the painting I'm doing is a surprise. I need something to energize me, to excite me. It can't be what I've already done. And going out into the landscape and getting these studies reinvigorates and nourishes my imagination. I marvel at these painters, and there are many, and accomplished painters too, who know exactly what they're going to do. And you know, there are people who watch these demonstrations and they say, right, what is it you do? Oh, you start with the sky, then you go on to this, and then you go on to that, and so on. And that's all right. But once you've done that, can you imagine doing it 20, 30 times? That's not art, that's craft. That's a process. It's got nothing to do with the business of painting. Painting is an art form. It has an entirely different set of rules. And the rules are ones to be broken every day. You've got to do that. You've got to surprise yourself. You've got to stimulate your imagination. I'm not saying for 1 minute that all that you have learnt about how to create pictorial space, design and so on isn't important. But you've got to challenge these things. Learn skills to forget them. Learn anatomy to forget it. You learn it, you forget it, and then you get on with creativity. They're important. They're all there. They're backing you up. They're like buddies. They're all there cheering for you as you sort of try and control this chaos in front of you. You know, and they're there for you, cheering when it comes into being. You know, whoa, it's fantastic. There's a great artist called Anish Kapoor, and he said, knowledge is the enemy of creativity. Knowing how you're going to produce them prevents you, in a way, from the new, exciting ways you can approach your practice. There isn't any other way, as far as I'm concerned. I can't say that I necessarily will get all that I felt about that thing that I saw and is recorded in a series of studies. I can't say I'll get it all in one painting. I might get part of it in that painting. I might need to do another or a third or a fourth. But I don't look at that study and copy it and expect to get it, because you'll not get it. What that already has, it'll keep. What you want from it is that bit that maybe will just simply remind you of the excitement that you had when you first saw this fantastic thing. Forget the study then and begin. When I think back to student days, and I think most art students will have been in this situation. You do something, some little treasure, and then some tutor comes along and crushes it and tells you it's a load of rubbish, and most often it is. And that was the case with me. What I found very, very hard to deal with in my early years was criticism. And it's because you produce these things sometimes, you know, feeling really that what you've done is half decent. I mean, maybe even more than that. But you take it personally because you don't always feel that the criticism is of the thing, but of you. And that taking things personally was a major problem for me. Humility is very, very important. Arrogance can actually be your undoing. And in the creative process, for me, that was the case. I knew if I could take on board some of the amazing things that have been said to me over the years and follow them through, and then take the criticism that I was delivered in the spirit in which it was given, and sometimes even if it was given with a certain lack of grace, if there was something to be learnt from it, for goodness sake, take it on board. That's the nature of humility. It's an alertness. It's not a weakness, it's a tremendous strength. It's keying into those things which are vital and important, and chucking out those states of thought that in fact bar you to access something which is vital to your own development.